Hello, my fellow chefs. Today we talk shrimp and grits, what it means to be a chef, and the difference between recipes and skills. I am Mark Grigsby, your chef and guide through this experience, and this is the incredible Discourse. Welcome, chefs, cooks, and listeners to the incredible Discourse. I am your chef, Mark Grigsby, and today we're talking about shrimp and grits first. I love some shrimp and grits. It's a classic comfort food. It originally came out of Charleston, South Carolina, and was called shrimps and hominy. Throughout the decades, it's been twisted and shaped into many, many variations, and today we're going to explore the process of yet another variation, mine. So let's get in it. You're going to need a few things to complete this recipe. You're going to need a couple of mixing bowls, a whisk, a lipped frying pan, or a shallow pot. You're also going to need a smaller sauce pot with a fitting lid with a wooden spoon, and then you're going to need some measuring equipment, spoons and cups. If you need any of these things, Amazon, Target, and Walmart generally have a great selection, and they're usually rather inexpensive. Check out some of the links I'll leave in the description for some items that'll work for this recipe. So there are quite a few ingredients in this recipe. You don't need all of them if you don't want them, but I like to use them because it creates such a much more flavorful dish. I broke this shopping list, if you will, into 3 parts: the grits, the shrimp, and the spice. For the grits, you're going to need stone ground grits. I like to use real stone ground grits versus instant grits. I prefer the texture and the consistency much better, but if you're more comfortable using instant grits or you have a time constraint, these will do just fine. Chicken stock or broth. I like to make my own, and I'll put up some recipes on my website soon, but store-bought will work just fine. Salt and shredded yellow cheddar. This is going to make those grits nice and creamy. All right, let's talk about what you're going to need for the shrimp. Obviously, you're going to need the shrimp. There's so many different types of shrimp out there. Big ones, small ones, jumbo, prawns, and you can use any of them to make this recipe, but today, I'm going with 1620 shrimp, peeled and deveined with the tails on. I like the tails on for the presentation piece, and you'll find out why towards the end of this recipe. Now, you're going to need some other stuff: diced bell pepper, diced tomato, minced garlic, sliced shallot, and some chopped scallions, and a little bit of white wine. And this white wine can be any. You can use cooking wine from the store. You could crack open a bottle of Chardonnay from your wine rack. Any will do, really. You're also going to need some more of that chicken stock and some cold cubed butter. You're also going to need a small amount of oil as well. Now, I know you're probably sitting there saying to yourself, well, this guy didn't give me any measurements to any of this shit, and you're 100% right. I have the exact recipe and method on how to make all of my recipes on theincrediblediscourse.com. I'll also be starting a YouTube channel where you can see all of my recipes in action. It's coming soon, and I'll keep you updated. Now, for the spice, you're going to need some simple ingredients from your spice cabinet. Smoked paprika. I prefer it to be smoked, but any paprika will really do. Salt, onion powder, garlic powder, oregano, dried basil, black pepper, white pepper, and a small amount of cayenne pepper. Now, you can increase or decrease how much cayenne is in this recipe depending on your preference. If you like a kick, go heavy. Okay, so before I start the actual cooking process, let's begin with the Cajun spice. Remember, this is completely optional. If you want a little kick and some extra flavor, go nuts here. That's how I like it, so that's what I do. I start by adding all of the spices into the small mixing bowl and whisking them until they're well incorporated. I'm going to set this aside for a couple of minutes while I prepare the shrimp. You could buy Cajun spice from the store, but I prefer to make my own. I like making it because I have more control over the heat and the flavor. If you don't like onion or garlic, you have the ability to change it or modify it. But if you buy it, you're kind of stuck with what you have. I add all the shrimp to the larger bowl. If they're not peeled, this is the time to do so. You can save these peels for stocks or sauces, and they can be frozen to save for later. Now, I coat the shrimp in about a tablespoon of oil. You can use any oil: olive, canola, vegetable, whatever you prefer. But you just need a little bit, and this is going to help your Cajun spice stick to the meat of the shrimp better. I use olive oil. I coat the shrimp in the spice and set these aside for a bit and let those flavors infuse. Now, let's start the grits. They take a little longer, and they can be set aside warm until you're ready to plate. Take the small sauce pot and boil the stock. Make sure the stock is rolling or you'll have a harder time when you put the grits in. Once the stock is rolling, add the grits while you're whisking. Once the grits are in, they're going to seize very quickly. You're going to turn your heat down to medium-low like a simmer while you're continuing to whisk. You'll notice that the grits get thick and you'll have to whisk them a little bit harder. Put the lid on it and allow it to cook for 30 to 40 minutes, making sure you whisk it very often. As they thicken, they scorch very easily, so don't fuck this up or you'll have to start all the way over. Nobody likes scorched grits. When finished, they shouldn't be extra grainy. They should be gritty but palatable. If they get stuck in your teeth when you taste it, you didn't cook this shit long enough, and that's a pro tip. When they're finished cooking, whisk in the cheddar. This will give them that creamy texture you're looking for. Now top that shit, set it aside, and let's do the shrimp. Take out your frying pan. Now you're going to add the bacon to the pan and set it on medium-low heat. You're going to cook this slowly so that you render the fat out. Rendering is the process of converting animal tissue into purified fat. In layman's terms, you're extracting the fucking fat from the bacon, and you're going to do this because this is the fat that you will sear the shrimp in. It's flavor, baby. That's what it's all about. Now, if you're allergic to bacon or you just prefer not to eat it, then substitute this entire process for a tablespoon of oil of your choice. Anyhow, where was I? So the bacon in the pan on low heat. Okay, it will start to sizzle low and slow, and you'll notice that it becomes oily. This is good. Move it around from time to time using a wooden spoon, and over the next 5 minutes or so, the meat will start to turn red and the bottom of the pan begins to pull up the fat. When the bacon is nice and crispy, remove it from the pan and set aside on your holding plate. Leave the fat in the pan because you'll need this for the next step. Raise your heat to medium-high. The temperature of the grease will rise rapidly. You don't need a long time, but we're searing the fucking shrimp right now, so you need heat. Add your shrimp side down, and don't be afraid because it's going to sizzle. And if it starts to pop, slightly turn down your heat, and I emphasize slightly because you need high heat to sear, but don't hurt yourself over some fucking shrimp. It's not worth it. You're going to sear these shrimp 1.5 to 2 minutes on each side. Do not shake the pan, move the shrimp, or disturb them while they're searing. You're trying to get a nice little crust on the outside of these shrimp. If you fuck with them too much, they're going to release their juices and then flood the pan, and then you're boiling the shrimp, and it just won't be a good product. After 2 minutes on each side, remove them and put them on the holding plate next to the bacon to use later. Don't worry if they've cooked all the way through or not, because after you finish making your sauce, you're going to add the shrimp back into the sauce, and then they'll cook all the way through. Now, let's make the good part. You should start to notice some shit sticking to the bottom of this pan, and this is good. You're building flavor, and this is called fond. Fond is the caramelized bits of food that remain at the bottom of the pan after browning meat or vegetables. You're going to add the wine and deglaze the bottom of the pan. Deglazing is simply the act of adding liquid to a hot pan, which allows all of the caramelized bits stuck to the bottom to release and add to the flavor. I scrape the bottom of the pan here just to be sure I get all of it. It's really an important part of the flavor profile I'm trying to build here. Now you're going to throw in the bell pepper, the garlic, the shallot, and the tomato and raise the heat to medium-high. Probably more on the higher side than the medium side. This mixture is going to start to simmer, and that's what you're looking for. I reduce this down for about 2 minutes or so to get all the flavor to meld. Reducing is important in recipes and is a term that everyone who cooks should understand. It's the process of thickening, intensifying, and concentrating the flavor of a liquid. Doing so and doing it well will result in flavorful sauces that have a great consistency. So now I'm going to add my cold butter and continue to reduce for about 1.5 minutes or so. I'm looking for a gravy-ish type consistency, not too thick, but also not too runny. When you reach that point, cut the heat, and now you're ready to plate. For this dish, I like using a large surface bowl or a plate with a lip on it. This way you can see all of the components and get that wow factor of the dish. I start with the grits. I use a plating spoon, but you can use whatever you want. A large chef spoon, a pop scoop, whatever you prefer. I center the grits in the bowl, and I use the back of my spoon to create a little well of sorts in the middle. Now, I take the shrimp and I stick them head first into the grits so that the tails are sticking up. Remember I told you about the wow factor with the tails on in the beginning? Well, this is it. I do this around the entire well to create a crown effect, and inside this well, I spoon some of the vegetables in and spoon the sauce around this mound of goodness. We're almost done. Finishing touches and we're ready to serve. I like to use scallions, but you can use chive or parsley or whatever green garnish you like. I like scallions, so that's what I use, and I sprinkle them tastefully all over the dish. You'll notice a pop of color by doing this, and that's a good thing. Now, one last thing, the bacon. Remember that bacon that you rendered to get the fat out to sear the shrimp? Now we're going to add a little bit of that all over to add texture, flavor, saltiness. And that's it. We made shrimp and grits, and this is my take on it. It's comforting, it's warm, it's filling. Enjoy this recipe and let me know in the comments if you made it this way, or if you have your own way of doing it. I'm always interested in different versions of the classics. There's really no right or wrong way to do this, just variations. Anyway, send me photos or your recipes to theincrediblediscourse.com or to any of our social media channels when they come up. Next, I want to talk to my home cooks or my listeners who have an interest in cooking at home. Shit, I guess this could be something a young cook entering the industry could benefit from too. Anyway, I want to talk about skills over recipes. Skills are abilities that you can apply to recipes like how to use a knife or cooking techniques or how to properly mise en place or even how to control the heat. And there are many, many skills and techniques that can be mastered in the kitchen. And these are not the only four, but these are great examples of starting points. And I know you guys at home aren't trying to be professionals, and I get that. But everyone has to eat, right? And you're going to be alive for a long time, I hope. And these are cooking skills and abilities that you'll be able to take with you all the way to the end, my friends. You got to eat good. Eating good is what it's all about, if you ask me. Doesn't matter if I'm in my home kitchen or my pro kitchen. I always want to eat great food. Great skills create great recipes, not the other way around. Anyone can take a recipe and recreate it, but the understanding of skills provide the details within the recipe. Here's an example. Let's say I'm making a recipe that calls for me to cut the vegetables in a certain, specific, uniform way, but I don't know how to use this knife, so I cut them blindly and they all turn out different shapes and sizes. Now what happens? All the vegetables cook at different times, and I run the risk of having some mushy and some crunchy, and then my dish turns out to be average because it lacks consistency in my skills. Not to mention, my dish looks a little funny because it looks like Ray Charles chopped my fucking vegetables for me. Finesse is the word. Or how about this example? Let's say I'm making fried chicken using the wet hand, dry hand method to double bread my chicken, and I forget to dredge my bird first before going into my binder, my wet, my egg, buttermilk, whatever. And I just go wet to dry. The wet has nothing to stick to because I skipped a crucial step. Then when I drop my chicken into the grease, my breading breaks and oil seeps into my crust and ends up burning my fried chicken from the inside out. Did I use all the recipe ingredients? Yes. But did I apply the required skill that the recipe asked for? No. Now my fried chicken is fucked and I'm hungry. The secret to this particular skill is that it is a typical common breading method that many recipes call for. This is something that you more than likely will use again and again, so mastering this skill or technique now makes your skill set more versatile. And believe it or not, even how you prep and set up before you start doing a recipe is a skill. Not everyone prepares the same way, and their end result often tells that story. And this applies to any recipe regardless of your setting. Whether you're in a professional kitchen, working for a real chef, or you're at home making dinner for your family, preparation is always key. I've seen young chefs trying to do way too much, and they'll start a recipe, and they walk all over the kitchen collecting all the shit to make it, and when they start measuring out all the ingredients, they start piling in the ingredients all in the same container, one after another, versus separating all of the measured ingredients into smaller containers. Then they get distracted or they walk away to go do something else, and then when they come back to continue this recipe, they can't remember what they put in the fucking container. More often than not, they miss something or they miscount, and now you're stuck with that prep. And you can't separate or rescale the vinegar in your vinaigrette or take out the mayo in your sauce after you've already added it. I mean, you could try, but it's very doubtful that doing so would give you the same result as if you would have exactly measured out everything, had it separated, and then focused on making the recipe. This way, it allows you to walk away and come back knowing exactly where you left off. Mise en place means putting in place or gathering, and there is most definitely a right way and a dumbass way to do it. And that's what makes this a skill. You have to learn and practice this to get good at it. It's just like the recipe we talked about earlier in the show, the shrimp and grits. There's a part of the recipe where it asks you to deglaze the pan. And no, deglazing is not a super skill that gives you some kind of fucking super chef power, but it's a technique within the skill of sautéing that if you don't do it correctly, could result in a little bit of a disaster. First, let's talk about why you're doing it. You do it because it releases the caramelized bits of brown fond from the bottom of the pan and gives your dish a depth of flavor, and it makes it more than one-dimensional. Now, where you fuck this up is by not burning out the alcohol from the wine and just throwing in the stock and the butter and finishing it. You're going to get this very bitter, alcohol-y flavor that you can't mask or fix. And now you've wasted all the prep and the time, and you got a subpar dish. But you learn this from practicing and evolving by adding these skills to your repertoire and paying attention to key words and vocabulary and understanding what they mean. Some of these keywords you'll see more and more as you do more and more recipes. Another thing to think about is controlling your heat. Yes, another skill for a cook's home or pro to think about. Not everything is cooked on high heat. As a matter of fact, there are more things cooked on the lower end of the heat spectrum than there are on the higher. Patience has a lot to do with this. You're at home and you're tired from working all day, and these fucking kids won't stop running around, and they still need to do their homework and take showers and do whatever the routine is. And it's easy to say, I'm going to put all this shit in a pot, and I'm going to work it on full blast because it's going to get done faster. And the reality is, chances are you're going to burn something or overcook something because you end up trying to do too much too fast. It's similar to saying, well, I'm going to go 100 miles an hour to work, so I'll get there faster. But chances are the risk is much greater than the reward. It's probably a smarter idea to leave a little earlier so you can take your time and be patient so that it ultimately results in a safe arrival. Patience, again, patience. Anyway, control the heat. This is a great tip for professional cooks or cooks getting into the industry as well. The more control over everything that you have, the more focus you can give to what you're doing, and the likelier your food will come out just as it's supposed to. Now, let's speak on what it means to be a chef. So I'll start this segment with a little story. I used to work for this lady chef a while back who created amazing dishes and was self-made. She owned restaurants all over and she specialized in Caribbean cuisine. Her short story was she was from Jersey, and she traveled down here to Miami to get her fishing license and to become a boat captain. She had a thing for fish and eventually opened Ortonique on the Mile. This place was known for the freshest fish and her creative dishes that more often than not focused on elements from the ocean in this fine dining setting. Anyway, I became her sous chef. That was more like an executive sous or maybe even a chef de cuisine. I was running this kitchen, I was doing the specials, and oftentimes designing or modifying menus, plus all of the other things that a chef de cuisine would do. She was at the restaurant often during her rotations between sites, events, and guest spots, and she knew I had a passion for the industry, but I was young and hungry for knowledge and advancement. I wanted to be like her. As a matter of fact, during my interview, she asked me where I saw myself in 5 years, and my response was ambitious as hell. I told her I wanted to be like her. I wanted to have several restaurants and my name all over the place. She had more awards than I had ever seen with my own eyes in any one place before, and those were just for that one particular restaurant. She had restaurants all over the country. Could you imagine how many she had just stockpiled away? So one day, after I had started and been there a little while, we had a conversation during a lunch service, and she said to me, there are two kinds of people in this industry, those who love it and have a passion for it, and those who are born to do this. Which one are you? And I had to pause and think. For the longest time, I knew I had a passion, even an obsession for the industry. I worked in different places to learn so many things with a purpose. Yes, we all need money, and I'm no exception. But the end game was always to be better and to learn everything I could for the betterment of myself and my career. I told myself many times, if I want to be the best, I have to learn it all, do it all, try it all. And that mentality pushed me for many years as a young, single, and hungry chef. So what was my answer? I had to give one because she wasn't going to let me off the hook. She knew it puzzled me, and in the moment, she said, ever since I started doing this, I knew I was born to do this. I don't see myself doing anything else. My response was, Well, I am born to do this, chef. But it took me a while to really understand the response that I gave because I knew I loved what I did. But was I equal in passion as she? Did I live and breathe the industry like she did? This pushed me to be even better. I told myself that I was born to do this and I knew I wouldn't be happy or successful doing anything else. I would eventually leave to start my own restaurant, and this is where I truly started to understand what this meant to me. I found such a joy in being a chef that had complete control over concept, cost, menu, and now the relevance of all of this story, what it means to be a chef can be different to each and can be answered in probably a few different ways. Google tells us that a chef is an individual who is trained to understand flavors, cooking techniques, how to create recipes from scratch using fresh ingredients, and have a high level of responsibility within a kitchen. And while all of those things are true, yes, I feel that there is much more to it than that. That description actually makes it sound like anyone can be a chef, and that, my friends, is a false narrative to the fullest degree. A chef creates an experience through food. It's a journey. It evokes a feeling within your consumer through years of training, dedication, and passion. And that experience can only be learned by commitment and time. And this type of wholehearted enthusiasm is becoming fewer and farther between. I'm born to do this because I feel responsible for every experience that goes out on a plate. And that's what it means to be a chef. All right, chefs, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed learning my take on the classic shrimp and grits and took a little something from my advice and experience. We'll build on this episode and do some fun stuff as well as talk about some inspirational things to keep chefs' minds going. Lately, just feels like the passion for the industry just isn't what it used to be for the young chefs, and so I want to use this platform to boggle some minds and get some brainwaves going. If you liked what you heard today, leave me 5 stars on Spotify or a great review wherever you're listening to this, and make sure you visit us at theincrediblediscourse.com and all of our social panels when they come up. I appreciate your time as always. I'm Mark Grigsby, and you've just been put through The Incredible Discourse. Till next time, where's my theme music?